Today, no quips, no catchphrases, no fancy language. We're talking about something really big and transformative today. Join me on Tanium Tech Talks. Welcome back to Tanium Tech Talks. Huge news today. We're talking about Tanium Atlas. This is a huge change for Tanium, and we're really excited to talk to you about it today. With me today, I have my host, as always, Jesh Sachs.
Thank you. And I too am so excited to jump into Tanium Atlas, this AI-driven new way of interacting with Tanium. I don't want to give it away, so I'm going to hand it over to our guest here, Stephen. Stephen, if you want to introduce yourself and share a little bit about what Tanium Atlas is.
Yeah, thank you, Josh. Thank you, Alex. Very excited to be back on the show and talking about Tanium Atlas. As y'all mentioned, very excited about this evolution of Tanium and what we're building. A quick introduction. My name is Stephen Yang, Senior Director of Product Management and Portfolio Lead. I lead our AI automation and governance portfolio. Really excited to dive into what we're building.
Even that's awesome. Welcome back. We love having you here. We love Tanium Tech Talk veterans. Makes things really easy for us. Tanium Atlas, my goodness, things look a little different and really excited. We're talking about how to move from a human-led experience to an AI first driven experience. What can you tell me about what is Tanium Atlas and why did we build it?
Absolutely, Alex. So let me actually first start with a story because I really think it illustrates the power of what we're building here. So a few weeks ago, one of our researchers was looking at a post around a recent CV that just came out, and they dropped in this write-up and some details into the Atlas experience. And within a few minutes, what Atlas was able to come back is scoping the affected devices and hosts and endpoints. It drafted a remediation plan, applied and understood an analysis of what the affected machines were, and sent them a summary email. Actually, they were using a phone to use Tame in that particular case, so that was even pretty neat there as well. But that's the kind of moment that Atlas is designed for, right? I'm able to just plug in information and have Atlas understand and use everything that Tanium offers through the platform, through our solution capabilities, and come back with a set of priorities, a set of recommendations, so that we as a collective, IT administrators, security operators, can then understand and then prioritize what we want to actually deliver to those endpoints and make changes, but also what we may not want to as well, right? Have the governance structure around that. But it's really using that Tanium real-time data to give you those insights proactively right in your fingertips.
Stephen, that is amazing to just hear that story of something that could have taken hours or a day to put together. What is the CVE? How is it affecting my environment? How do I fix it? That
Yeah.
can take a lot of time. CVEs aren't always easy. So I love it so much. I want to get our users to the point where they too can do this. I'm staring at this page. This looks very different than my classic Tanium UI. Tell me, how did we get here and what are we looking at?
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of building off of that, right? As we've been watching the AI space just all year over the past, few years, but also just within the past few weeks and months, just the pace of innovation and development in this space and the way we need to go and evolve, the way we, defend against vulnerabilities, the way we manage our endpoints and environments just has radically changed. And so what we've done here is we've looked at Tanium and our own platform and said, the traditional way that our users and IT and security teams think about these type of consoles where they're built around fixed modules, persona dashboards, they need to figure out how to ask a question, how to actually conduct an action and workflows. That model really has been cracking under the weight of just modern IT estates, right? Just hundreds of thousands of endpoints, dozens of integrations, alerts coming in from every single possible source. And how do we actually change the game here? How do we actually radically simplify this so that there's a single starting point using natural language, taking real action with all of Tanium's data and governance under the hood through an AI and agentic experience that's really tailored and adapted to a specific persona, and not to a role or a broader organizational element here. So what we've done here is basically abstracted away all of the kind of knobs and complexity of how do I actually understand what to do in Tanium. But let me just start with what do I actually want to achieve, right? So in this particular example, I just asked the question, provide an overview of the health of my environment. It's a very open and vague question. But what Alice was able to do is understand, okay, I want to get a first glance view of all my Tanium managed endpoints. What is the distribution across different operating systems? Any known issues? What is my core client health? And different details around patch coverage status. But what you've noticed here is this is a very dynamic and composable UI, right? I didn't need to navigate to a specific page. I needed to go different layers into the page hierarchy. I just asked a question. I went in and go and had Atlas go and create these different types of pages for me.
So that question that you mentioned, that's the dialogue on the right that we see here, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
So
So,
this is a history of page creation.
so this is the prompting that I actually invoked this page creation, right? So let me actually start from a fresh new page, right? So what I'm actually going to go and ask is uh, identify fully performing devices in my environments and run an analysis. And so what's powerful about this whole Alice experience is I went in and gave it this prompt and this instruction. And what you'll see under the hood here is it's going and understanding the entire API surface across all of our different solutions and capabilities, right? So as you can see here, it returned with this response of doing a performance analysis, like looking at CPU, memory, disk utilization, right? And I didn't tell it to go and do that. It just figured it out on its own. And that's really the power here is I don't need to understand the sensor query syntax. I don't need to understand how to achieve something within Tanium. I just pose a problem to it. I pose a goal or an SLA or thing that I want to achieve and have Tanium Atlas come back to me with that information. And so I will kind of show how it's working on the hood a little bit, right? So what you can see here is as it's doing this research, it's going in and traversing all the different APIs that we have across our different solutions. And it's identifying what's relevant, what's not relevant, and as a result, kind of generating these dynamic dashboard panels for me. And so this is the page concept, right? So this whole page concept is allowing me to create these referenceable, I like to call them notebooks. So they can be ephemeral pages, or they can be pages that I just go and refer back to them in a more static nature in my favorites list, as an example. So in my favorites, I've actually run this question before. But this data is also not just a snapshot, right? It's real live data. So in this example that I ran a few days ago, I asked for the lowest performance endpoints analysis of the performance issues. So you can see here across all these different panels on this page, I can see those precise endpoints. What is their CPU consumption? What is the memory consumption? And any other details that I want to ask here. All on a single page, easy for me to go and reference.
Steven, that's really really cool. So I mean, right off the rip, there's this line that I really really like. It's legacy consoles were designed around fixed modules and linear workflows, and not the dynamic multi-step nature of modern endpoint operations. So what I see you doing here, when Jesh and I came to the company as technical account managers, we were expected to know everything there was to know about the five modules that were out at the time, right? And now, 5, 6 years, 7 years later, there's so many different areas that you would have to be an expert in to understand how to move through everything fluidly. But you're telling me that with this alone, we can take any individual and essentially, boom, here, you're a master of Tanium. You can do absolutely almost anything you could, as long as, it puts all the pieces together.
Exactly. And I think that's the really exciting power of this is uh, the building block nature of this, right? So with this whole page concept and the panels, I can go and plug and play any types of data that are relevant to me in my workflow, my investigation, whatever I want to do. And that's really that personalization element to it, right? So really shortening that time to investigation problem drastically, right? It collapses the entire need of, oh, I need to go into this page and figure out which question I should ask, or correlating, any changes that I've done on another page and trying to bring it together. Alice just automatically and deliberately consolidates all that information for me to go and drive that analysis on a single page.
I know. Goodness, a few days ago, I was playing with this, and one of my favorite. Well, we don't have favorite customers. One of my customers who I've worked with in the past, they were really great at patching, and they had this amazing dashboard that I think I've referenced before. But they would put it together before every single patching cycle, and it had all these health metrics that they would investigate. And just out of curiosity, I asked Atlas, "Hey, I'm going to be patching. I want to check my endpoint health before I start patching. Can you show me anything I might need to fix?" And Atlas made this beautiful like dashboard with charts for me, and it was almost identical to what we had come up with manually. I was super impressed just by with a simple prompt, I could create something like that. And then to your point, what you were saying earlier, we have all these panels and it's changeable. So it's not like Atlas gives me this and I have to live with what it gave me. I could come in there and say, oh no, I want that displayed in a chart, or can you edit this? And Atlas will help me with that, right?
Exactly. So really solving that cross-domain problem, right? So instead of thinking about, oh, if I want to keep my environment up to date, I need to do like patchings, software deployments. Also need to kind of manage and enforce certain policies, making sure that I can do discovery of more assets. Just think about that all into a single workflow, into a single page. Alice completely dissolves those walls because, again, it has access to those APIs. And so it has the domain knowledge across the entire Tatum platform and brings that together. So that's super exciting about this. Um, and I think that's a really great transition to how this, again, expanding beyond what you see here, but how it's working under the hood a little bit, right? I think fundamentally here, we're using the same real-time data, high fidelity endpoint telemetry that Tanium has spent, incredible amount of time building in terms of our core architecture, right? So across some of the most complex environments that we've proven out, we're using that and taking advantage of that within Atlas. But what's really neat about this is the agentic experience. And I wanted to then kind of showcase for y'all uh, where this can head and where we're building towards, right? So this is our concept of ambient agents. So if you think about an agentic experience where I don't want to always have to prompt it in a certain way. I don't want to have to ask, where I might have performance issues or, vulnerability gaps in my environment. But what if Tanium told me? What if Atlas just proactively was able to monitor for these different types of conditions, deviations from a baseline, and give me notifications or give me an analysis so that when I land into the console, I have a fantastic starting point of what I should be doing next. And I have all the data points to make an informed decision, right? I think that's really key here. But kind of building on that performance example, what we've done here is build up what we call an ambient agent page. And so what I basically asked it to do is monitor for performance issues in the environment. So similarly, how it went and created, high CPU, memory, low disk usage. But what we can see down here is what we're calling, a background agent in the page. And so what this ambient agent is doing, it's running on a certain cadence. I told it to run every hour, but it's going and detecting, just issues, any types of deviations and changes, right? So you can see here, we've run a couple of consecutive scans on this basis. And let me jump down below where there was some great data that was highlighted here, right? So CPU spiked on these devices on this run at 8:27 p.m. We can see, again, the surge on a number of other endpoints. So again, it just gives me all this information at my fingertips without me having to go and proactively querying for that information and trying to dig through all the details, but just have Atlas give me that information up front.
I'm sorry. See, I just got really excited because I briefly saw that it was saying, hey, here's 6 machines running with high CPU. By the way, 2 of these are also on the high memory list, which is like it's showing me a lot of possibilities where we could track down performance issues. Um, but I really wanted to hit on it. So this is turning natural language prompts into dynamic pages that bring together all of our relevant endpoint telemetry that really only Tanium has, and recommendations and actions. And it helps us move from question to investigation to remediation in a single governed experience with essentially one individual.
Right.
Oh,
Exactly.
that's so cool.
Exactly. And the I think the really key part here is the personalization, right? Element of this, right? It's what do I care about, right? And it's not a dashboard that needs to fit the mold of every single persona and what everybody wants to see. But this is a page and this is a workflow that is particularly tailored to my work, my investigations. And of course, this is something that we are going to be working on to allow folks to share pages as well, right? Because we want to start from a position where everybody has their own individual pages. But if I'm working with Alex and Josh, both of you, and I wanted to share this information that I was able to gather from Alice, I want to easily be able to do that, and that's something we're working on soon here is being able to have those collaborative workspaces.
I like that concept. I'm excited for the shared pages because I can imagine someone on my team makes a great dashboard and then just shoots it over to me and I can see the page.
Right.
Um, in terms of history, so I can see you have a lot of chats here, a lot of things open. Is there like a limit to the amount of context and history and chats that anyone can have open within Atlas, or can we just start asking questions, building pages?
Yeah, so there's currently no limit in terms of the total number of pages. Now, within the page itself, there is just more and more context that you add in there. There will be, some level of cap that we will need to um, have and enforce, just because, the agent needs to, it can't store all that context in memory there. That being said, touching on the memory piece, what we've done is our fantastic engineering team has done a ton of optimizations in terms of compaction of context and memory, but also what you've noticed here with Alice is it goes and looks through all of our APIs in terms of how it goes and resolves a problem. But what we've built in here is what we call memory. And so the idea with memory is that the next time I ask a similar question, it doesn't start from scratch, right? It has a heuristic to go off of and learn from. So what Alice is doing is learning patterns of work and how you frame questions and how you're asking questions, and it's able to reuse them. So over time, those learnings flow back into this kind of continuous improvement pipeline. So they benefit you every single time you work within this Alice experience.
This is all crazy information. You're blowing my mind right now, Steve. Okay. I have so many technical questions, but how about is this being previewed for customers? What are some customers already seeing from this?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're currently in private preview, but we're soon going to be launching this into public beta, where this is going to be available for all of our cloud customers to start off with. They will need to have the AI feature setting turned on. There's few regions in which the models that we are using are not available in those regions. But we are providing an opt-in functionality so that you can route your traffic if you would desire to get access to Atlas. So those would be the Canadian and Latin regions for now. Obviously, we're going to continue to make improvements and drive more model availability there across the board. But in terms of your other question, in terms of what customers are saying in a private preview, this has completely changed the game, right? Just both from the persona of a tactical day-to-day engineer, where they're doing deep dive investigations, they're kind of trying to correlate error codes in terms of is that just scoped to a single endpoint? Is that affecting my larger environments? To our partners, where they're managing multiple customers, environments, and clients, being able to use Atlas to basically scope across all these different types of endpoints and manage changes and manage those environments all through this single interface has been a game changer. And then from kind of more of the executive persona and folks that are more looking for the key metrics, key KPIs that they're looking for. Again, they no longer need to ask an engineer to go and create a custom dashboard for them, and then have to set up a connection or schedule an email. They can just go in and just ask the question, and Alice is able to produce those different types of responses for them. And then it no longer becomes ad hoc requests every single time, right? Being able to take advantage of the page model, they come back into Atlas and it's already there, right? It's the same question that they formulated before, updated live with new information. So completely game changing for, a ton of our customers as they think about a new way to interact with Tanium and ultimately solve their day-to-day problems and kind of the workflows and business outcomes they want to achieve.
Stephen, I am so excited for this. Just everything that you're talking about with customers using it. Back to, I think, what we mentioned at the very beginning, we've always had great data within Tanium. It can just be hard to leverage it sometimes because you're going to so many different places to pull it together. And I have been excited to see AI slowly coming in. I feel like this is one of my favorite ways that we are using AI to just drive some amazing innovation within the product, to be able to take that great data and present it to you in this way that you can prompt, you can edit, it's at your level, it knows how you work. I am super, super excited. So if I'm brand new to this, what does this look like? I'm assuming I don't have all these pages in the background.
So if you're starting in fresh here, you wouldn't see all of these new pages or favorites that I've accumulated over time. You start with a fresh blank canvas. You can open up a new page and start asking prompts as I did before. Now, over time, you will have accumulated more pages as I have here. You can favorite pages into this section. But what's really neat about this is we're going to add more out-of-the-box page templates over time here, so that when you land into Tanium, it's not just a blank canvas. There are some more tailored pages, based on what's most relevant to you. So that's something that we're looking at as well. And then the idea of a page template gallery, right? So, Jess, you mentioned earlier, hey, this is exactly the data that I was looking for, exactly the right format. How can I share this with others or have this as a fantastic starting point if I want to make, a few modifications later? So something we're working on is the idea of a template gallery, where I can save these certain pages as a template and be able to create new instantiations to make certain modifications or share them with other team members.
All right. Oh goodness. As Alex said, so many questions. We have such limited time. Um, Actions. You've mentioned this before. I'm a little bit scared when I hear that an AI is going to start taking actions for me. How do we keep people from having that moment that we're going to just do something crazy?
Yeah, no, great question. And this is something I hear from almost every conversation I have with our customers and partners. And so let me actually use this example, right? So this is a page that I created before in terms of identifying the top CISA kevs, and identifying a remediation path for them, right? Um, so what this page has highlighted to me is all these critical CVEs in my environment, the affected endpoints, and what patches are relevant here to uh, complete the remediation path for those relevant CVs. So what it actually does is it pulled back a deployment plan for me. So it's formulated this patch list. It's identified the target endpoints, the scope of endpoints in which this is going to land on. But it won't do yet is autonomously take action for you, right? So what it's going to do is it's going to formulate this plan. It's going to identify the scope of impact. And we know, again, it's taking advantage of all the great things that we've already built into the platform. So things like our ring deployment plans, right? Being able to roll things out through progressive rings, all that is factored in here as well. And then it just becomes a confirmation to you as the user of, do you want to proceed as is? Do you want to make any modifications? And that's where this chat experience becomes super powerful, because this proposed remediation, from this point on, I can say, go and take this action, or no, pause and don't take this action. So that's an important part here that we want to highlight is uh, the amount of user control in terms of taking action, as well as the governance structure around this. And I think I want to take advantage of this topic to also highlight that all your interactions with the agent respect your permissions, respect, access to the endpoints that you have. all the RBAC controls, all the management rights controls are respected by the agent. So there's never going to be an escalation privilege, right? So the agent will just be able to take advantage of things they otherwise could have done manually, but just a lot more efficiently, and a lot more kind of proactively for you.
I was just about to ask about role-based access control and how that works with Tanium Atlas. You're reading my mind.
Yeah. And so like this is, I think, a really important part of how we're first starting off with Atlas is really, again, putting it into the control of our users, of our customers. Now, what's exciting about this is eventually we do want to get to a state as customers get familiar and start building up trust in this platform, which is for high confident, low risk actions that the agent can go and actually, take action. And we're building out a system here where we're going to put the right guardrails, right approval structure in place so that you as a user can define what is okay for an agent to do. You can kind of think of things like we probably don't want the agent to take an action that would reboot a device, right? But something that's maybe a little bit less harmless, I will allow an agent to do, be able to scope it to a certain number of endpoints, right? So if it's only taking action on 10 endpoints that are low risk, that are not my critical executive devices, that's okay. But if it's hitting 10,000 endpoints or my highest criticality devices, probably want some type of approval, right? And so those are the different types of controls that we're going to build into the system so that we find that right balance of both automation as well as governance and control.
Yeah, I love the words you're talking about, right? I grew up around IT stuff, so I am a very mistrusting individual when it comes to like letting my computers do things for me. Um, so I appreciate that, right? It's all about building that trust from the ground up until someone feels comfortable enough to say, yes, okay, go do the thing. It's like a self-driving car, right?
Yeah, exactly. Um, And kind of on that note of building trust and having more context and data, one of the things that I want to highlight here is a really neat flow that I think a lot of our customers will resonate with, which is identifying and removing unused software. So we're thinking about like what can I actually do in Tanium to solve my business value cases, right? And so this is something that comes up a ton with customers is we have a ton of expensive licenses that have been distributed over end users over time. How do you help me identify those unused software and actually go and remove them as well, right? So this is one of those cases where it could potentially be, a low risk type of activity as long as you have the right kind of notifications and workflows in place, right? So in this particular example, I asked Atlas to go and identify those unused applications and build a workflow to uninstall, right? So it give me this proposed workflow. It identified all of these unused applications. Again, these are live results, right? So these are not snapshots. I can go and reference them. But what's also really exciting here is hard dollar savings, right? Like, how do I actually correlate just unused installs with approximate savings? I know in the boardroom, this is coming up a lot with our customers, right? Like, how do we find the dollars and cents across all of our different tools and save the company money? Now, of course, these estimated savings are estimates, right? Like the license costs are not going to be, precise because everybody has a different agreement and contract. But at least it gives you a directional approach of how much approximate savings can we achieve through these different types of workflows. And what we're going to be doing here and adding more context is how do we actually use what we're calling kind of research agents or internet facing agents to pull in information from outside of the model, outside of Tanium to go and enrich this data even more, right? So if you think about device savings, you might also think about, when are things going end of life? Um, can I actually replace a certain piece of hardware as an approach instead of kind of replacing the overall device itself? So just feeding it more information, more context to be even more intelligent. And it moves beyond just endpoint management. If you think about vulnerabilities and risks, there's a ton of great content that lives, um, out in the industry and in the market that folks are creating, and how do we actually kind of embed, correlate that with the Tanium endpoint data as well. Now, of course, we also have fantastic teams here at Tanium that is going to go and prune and make sure that that data is accurate as well, right? As we add more information, we also want to validate and make sure that that information is good data and not corrupting, the information that we have within Tanium and Alice as well. But all very exciting directions for where we can take this within the platform.
Absolutely. Speaking of exciting directions, I know we've covered so much today. We've hinted at some of the future things that are coming down the road, but I know Atlas is changing so quickly. Um, even I'm sure from when we record this today to when it's out GA, it's going to look a little bit different. So tell me, where do we plan on taking Atlas? What's our goal here?
Yeah, absolutely. So, kind of the overall vision here is this becomes your true and default experience within Tanium, right? So no longer do we need to think about different types of module workbenches and how do I gather certain pieces of data? How do I create, custom sensors and packages, but have everything rooted in what is a problem I have today? What are my priorities for this week, for this day, for this month, and have Alice go and whether it's running in the background for you to identify those issues or something that you're doing more ad hoc and doing investigations and triage, all within this experience, right? Um, Now, the other part of this is how do we think about Atlas and tying to all the other tools and workflows in your business, right? So, um, an example would be, ServiceNow with, ticket management, change management. We want Alice and Tanium to be able to plug into those workflows as well. We also recognize that, a lot of our customers are building their own in-house agents. And so we're opening up this ecosystem from Alice, being able to have an externally facing MCP, so that the same tools and capabilities that you see natively within Atlas can also be taken advantage of in your own in-house agents that you're developing as well. So it it fundamentally goes back to Tanium real-time data, right? Like that is our bread and butter. That's what we've been doing well for more than a decade, and just building the workflows on top of it so that it just becomes a lot simpler, a lot easier to get back the right information at the right time and prioritize in a way that you can action on immediately.
Steven, that's incredible. So how about the actual product Atlas? What about how does it work for the person sitting in the chair? Can you show me some interaction patterns, where to click, what happens when I do certain things?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So let me go back to that page model, right? Because that's the fundamental bedrock layer here. So as I mentioned before, I can go to a page, I can go and add it to my favorites. I can delete the page. Once I delete the page, it goes into this deleted section that I can also restore as well, right? So just some things here that we want to give flexibility, but also help users clean up, these pages because this could build up a lot over time. Some of the other interaction patterns that I think are incredibly neat here and help with the experience. Um, you can see here on this right-hand side, the chat experience is a little bit narrow. So I can, make those adjustments here as well. But what if I wanted to really be more fully immersed in the chat experience? I can swap the chat and the page, right? So the chat goes onto the left-hand side. It's more predominant experience. Swap it back out, right? Let me go here. I can also pop out the chat window. So this will allow me to kind of really immerse into this experience. And I see a lot of customers actually with, multi-screen setups where they have a popped out chat window and then they can see all different pages on their second screen. Again, just to make it a lot easier for you as a user to manage all these different types of pages here. You can also pop out individual panels as well, right? So especially with these panels as they become more fulsome with data, time series charts, there's a lot of information that's packed into them. You may want to go and pop them out. Um, what's also really interesting here is being able to actually, add this context from this panel. So if I pop it in here, I actually can get information around this panel itself, right? So this just gives me additional context around this panel so that I can do deeper dive investigations on a panel by panel basis, right? So it says send context to chat. Um, Really neat functionality there here. Some other things that I want to highlight is what we call the command palette. So the command palette, it allows me to go and say, maybe I want to go to a specific page. I have a ton of pages here. I don't want to go and have to dig into my left-hand column, but maybe I want to go and search for um, a page that's from the 9th, right? Takes me to that page directly here. We also have this concept of an AI scratch pad. So, if this is not something that you want to have create a new page, but just the questions that I have, right? So maybe, what devices haven't rebooted in the last 7 days. Um, just something I'm interested to look at. I actually don't need this to be a page because it's just kind of a quick question. That AI scratch pad enables me to go and do that. But if I figured out that, hey, this is actually something that is really interesting that I do want to save as a page, I can easily do that as well and say open as a page. And so then it'll go and formulate that page for me within my left-hand sidebar here. So a ton of neat interactions that I want to call out. And then the final thing I wanted to point out is reporting feedback. So as we've been building out, as Alex, Jess, you've been calling out, we're moving really quickly here, and iterating almost on a daily basis. And obviously there are a ton of things that we want to build upon, but there's also going to be bugs and edges that we discovered. So we encourage all of our customers to go into here and directly add this feedback. This comes back directly to our team. And we're able to go and analyze this in aggregate, figure out where we should go be building. We're hearing your feedback and we're iterating rapidly here. This has really been our point of emphasis as we're building Atlas is rapid iteration, rapid feedback, rapid pushing out new features and capabilities.
Amazing. I love it. So we've got the chat, can move the chat around. We've got the pages that are composed of the individual panels that we can get extra data on. We've got the little, what do we call this on the left? Navigation bar, command bar?
Yeah, we could call it the page
The
follow.
left.
We have the
Yeah.
left section where we can make new pages, scroll through our old ones, go to that command palette to search things. I also see a little button down there that says Tanium Classic. Does that flip me back to the original Tanium UI?
Yes, it does. So if I go back to Tanium
Okay.
Classic, this brings me back to the classic mode of Tanium, right? And then I can go and jump back into Alice right here, and it brings me back into the state.
That was cool.
This has been absolutely fabulous, and I am super excited to see where this takes us. Not only is this amazing and kind of blowing my mind right now with how quick this can make some of our workflows, but I'm excited to know like where we're going to go once we have that context, we have that trust. So stay tuned for more, I guess.
Yes, Stephen, thank you so much for joining us today, for joining us always. This, to piggyback on what Jesh said, this is really, really exciting, and watching the evolution of where we've come is astounding to me. And now, with the impetus, with the rise of different AI models and things like Mythos, we need to move faster. You need to move fast. You need to move accurately. You need to be more proactive rather than reactive. And I can definitely see Tanium Atlas making that a reality, right? So thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Tech Talkers at home watching. Please join us next time on Tanium Tech Talks.
Yay!